after they take the photos, we move them out of here. Why are we allowing them to linger?
We're gonna have to move the merch.
Why is there a merch store? Get rid of it. Give it to them for free. I don't care. Just move those barriers. Move this back. Literally, just make that happen. I promise this will flow 30 times better. I've said that 30,000 times. Jesus Christ.
Hey guys, so no, this is not clickbait. I wanted to talk about, the personality model I've created and the neuroscience exercises for positive and negative emotions, and I wanted to apply it to something that is very relevant to most people and that people are focusing a lot of attention on, just so people can see how practical the exercises and the information I've created are, but how useful it is to understanding reality and understanding what's actually important to work on. And, as a bonus as well, understanding where people are headed, and what's going to happen to them neuroscientifically and objectively if they continue on the path they're going on. So for someone like mr.beast, obviously, I've looked at some of the interviews he's done, and I've seen and I've heard of the amount of time and effort he's put into videos and understanding how to make the best video, what's the best editing style. I've seen how much time he's put into all of that. So I'm in no way saying that he doesn't work hard, but it's important to understand where your hard work gets you and what your actual intention is and where that will lead you up in life. Because if you look at part 1 of my course, I talk about how exposure therapy usually helps people to see how they can have more unconditional positive emotions and the things they usually associate with fear or shame or whatever. But where exposure therapy is often lacking is unintentionally when people are exposed to something they really, really love over a long enough time, the exposure therapy has the opposite effect, where now they're seeing that the things that they really love can't force them to feel positive emotions. They can influence people to feel positive emotions, but the continued exposure over time gets people to see that it has no meaning. And then when you don't understand why it is neuroscientifically, why you feel positive and negative emotions, it can leave you often feeling quite helpless and desperate, because either subconsciously or consciously, you don't understand why you feel positive emotions or negative emotions. And then that creates a lot of doubt of, well, is it even possible to feel positive emotions? Does it even make sense logically? If I get older, is my happiness going to become more and more conditional and limited and rare, that I just end up becoming more miserable and miserable and miserable? And even with people like mr.beast, he, from what I've heard, didn't grow up in the most prosperous, wealthy family, but he worked hard to get where he is. And again, I am not saying he is a psychotic individual, but there's a video that popped up on my YouTube recommendation feed because I want to create a video about, mr.beast and the people who work very hard and, how they live life and where they end up going psychologically and emotionally after a long enough period of time. And so I got recommended a video on a controversy where somebody was like, oh, I'm going to go to where mr.beast lives to try and meet him, and I'm going to give him a mr.beast standout. And obviously he was trying to, use the mr.beast name to get a lot of views. And, I've also heard there's a lot of other people who have been, trying to get money from mr.beast or meet him or, become like him and, do these viral videos involving him to, get their own YouTube career off. And, mr.beast's reply to this guy making this video is something like, go away, I'm sick of people harassing me. And, I'm not saying he's wrong for getting angry at that person. I doubt the person making that video who was trying to meet him and give him a standout was a, saint feeding the orphans of the world and, trying to save the baby seals from, being clubbed. My point being, I doubt his intentions were very pure and genuine. Obviously, he was trying to make a viral video to get money. And so it's, somewhat understandable why somebody would get angry. But my point is, I've had moments, and I'm sure mr.beast has had moments where, especially when he was first gaining success, even, when he first got his video that first got 1,000 views, or 100,000 views, or 1,000,000 views, or even the time where he realized, oh, I don't need to work anymore, or, I can do this as a full-time job. I'm sure when he had those moments, in those moments, he was so happy that probably if somebody was like, hey, I'm trying to find Mr. Beast to give him a cardboard cutout, I'm sure he would have been so happy at that moment. He would probably be like, oh, why not? I feel very lucky for everything I had. Somebody wants to use my name in a thumbnail, why not? And again, I'm not trying to say Mr. Beast is some evil person for not doing this, but my only point is that the novelty of what we have eventually ends. And if we're not working towards understanding the neuroscience and our own psychology of, why it is we have positive and negative emotions, then eventually the things that we've loved that were so amazing, they end up losing their luster. And then we need more and more and more. And I'm the same too. When I was a kid, I wasn't always committed to this path in my life. There are times even when I was a teenager, I was very unhappy. And versus when I was a kid, if I had the same position and things and opportunities I had when I was a teenager, I probably would have been a lot happier. That's just how things go. And I'm not some saint for being on the path that I am. But, when I create progress and understand neuroscientifically why I can have less greed unconditionally, how I can have more appreciation for others more unconditionally, and understand the neuroscience of it and the logic, and understand why the counter arguments to the information I have isn't accurate, then I can give that to other people, and they can have more unconditional positive emotions, and they can teach it to other people, and they even might find more efficient or better understandings of things that I didn't. The point is, you build a rolling wheel of success, and the reality is, when nobody does that, people just become more and more unhappy. The greed becomes more and more unconditional. The anger becomes more and more unconditional. The doubts of not understanding why it is we feel positive or negative emotions, creates a sense of helplessness and desperation. And so, if we all work towards this together, we can all have a much happier life together, because we're all working towards something that benefits not just us, but everyone around us. And again, that doesn't make people who are not working towards that, horrible, despotic people that will never change. People can change all the time, but it makes life much easier. And hopefully, I'd say my exercises are very good. I'm genuinely very happy in my life. And there's still one other video I'm working on to finish the course. But even without that video, my exercises are very good at helping to understand our positive and negative emotions, having more unconditional positive emotions, and just generally being more happy. And that's something I would like for everyone. And so to full circle it back to the discussion of Mr. Beast, that doesn't make people like Mr. Beast evil. But I would warn anybody, whether it's somebody like Mr. Beast or just anyone of any level of wealth, of any level of social status, that it's not just possible to have more unconditional positive emotions, but there's scientific and neurological information and exercises you can actually do to get there. And you probably won't get it the first time you try, but the value of what you can have is so much more amazing and profound than just having amazing moments of achievement and achieving your dreams, and then eventually the novelty of that achievement slowly dwindling over time. And again, understanding the neurological and the scientific reasons why the novelty fades over time. And then we can all be happy together. And so, one thing I want to mention too is that, I personally have known a number of people who, grew up with very poor or, unhappy parents, or who had an unhappy childhood. And those people later on in life ended up with a lot of money through hard work or the business, whatever. And again, those people aren't necessarily bad, but I've seen their emotions. I've seen those people be very emotionally unstable consistently, even though, they came from very poor backgrounds. I'm not calling out one person, but I've known a few people who grew up very poor and then later got a lot of money, and some of those people ended up being very unhappy people and then not willing to work on it, insisting that it wasn't them that was the problem, it was everyone else. And so they didn't do any work on their emotions and their behavior, and then they just went to, okay, well, now if I get X, then I'll be happy, that'll solve all my problems. Having money, even having a lot of money, isn't the problem. It's the greed, it's the anger, it's the fear, it's the sadness that you have while having that money and then are refusing to deal with or take responsibility for your emotions, and then you end up taking those emotions out on everyone else. And obviously this process isn't like, oh, I became a millionaire yesterday, now I'm angry, you know. But if you watch the part 1 of my video series on my YouTube channel, you know, you'll understand that this is usually exposure of having a lot of wealth or your dream for months or even years. And then this kind of effect takes place because the novelty wears off after so much continuous exposure. And you don't even have to use people in my life. Just look at all of the people who, you know, were raised in a very affluent family and then just grew used to their wealth and just grew unhappy. There are even people who grew up from very humble beginnings as very poor people, and then they didn't deal with their emotions or take responsibility for it. And now all of a sudden, the thing that used to be their source of happiness no longer creates happiness for them. It could even be a reminder of how they have no control of their emotions or understanding of their emotions. And so they associate the money they have with suffering. And again, if you watch the video course I've done, specifically part 1, I talk about all of the science that is inherent in all of this. And to be fair, it's only later in the course that I really cite more scientific sources, but the reality is a lot of the science is very intuitive, and so you don't really need a lot of sources to see this, but it is very hidden because, again, if you don't understand the neuroscience, it's going to not make a lot of sense. A few professors who've done the studies on the neuroscience of our subconscious as well as how much faster it is than our conscious mind, which, you know, will help you have an understanding why suffering can seem so unescapable after a long period of time. And again, the science, it's very intuitive. It's very hard to see if all you're relying on is your own experience and what you've felt and what you've felt positive and negative emotions with. So watch the course, it'll make sense. I go over all of the science and everything, and yeah, hopefully, you know, you can create a whole world where everyone has happiness and love and inspiration more unconditionally without the need of winning $10 million from Mr. Beast or needing to give a standout to Mr. Beast.